Hi there, Steve Arterburn here, and thanks for joining me for Going Deeper. Today we're going to go deeper into a question that I received. And by the way, if you have a question, I'll try to answer that for you at stevesocial@newlife.com. You just give me your question, I'll try to address it right here. stevesocial@newlife.com. So here's the question. Steve, that's, I think, appropriate to start off a question that way. Steve, myself and others in our life recovery group are struggling with anger and forgiveness. Anger management didn't help. How do we work through it? We are told our anger is a choice, but it's automatic. How do we get to a place where we can choose? What steps can we take? Scripture tells us to do or not do things, but doesn't explain the how. What can you recommend? All right, so here's the bottom line on anger. If I'm angry, I am expecting something of somebody, and they may not be able to deliver it. If I'm angry at you, I might be angry because you did something to hurt me. Or I might be angry that you hurt somebody else, or I'm angry because you've never asked for my forgiveness or even known that you did something wrong. So, if I'm going to resolve anger, which if I can resolve the anger at somebody, I might be able to move into forgiveness. All right, so Amelia is learning to factor. So 8, you can divide it by 2, and you can divide it by 4, and so those 2 and 4 are the factors of 8. So is 1, I guess you could say. So if I strip down anger and factor what's there, well, what is there? There's an expectation and there's a hurt that's behind that anger. What's the hurt? If you're an angry person, you ought to ask yourself, what are you angry about? What are you hurting over? What are you afraid of? And you're, in that fear where you would be vulnerable, maybe you're using the anger to overpower the feeling of fear. And really, once you realize, this is what I'm afraid of. We were in a group one time, and I asked a gentleman, his wife said, he doesn't know how to love us. And he's very rigid. It's all about doing this and that and rules and everything. And I just said to the guy, no one had mentioned fear. It's all about anger, control, bitterness, rage. I said, what are you so afraid of? Big old guy. Tears just start streaming down his face, because he was so angry. His dad was horrible. But was he angry at his dad? Was he afraid about life because of his dad? No, actually he was angry at his mother. See, because she let dad be that way. How many times do we hear from people, I can't believe it. My husband had 18 affairs, was an alcoholic, a drug addict, a rageaholic, and the kids are mad at me. Well, they're angry, one, because you're probably safer to be angry at, and number 2, they kind of hold you accountable because you let it get so bad, never jumped in or jumped in too late. So with anger, we want to be sure that if we're angry, we will look at the thing that happened, and then we'll start to see it from the other person's perspective. What were they thinking? Maybe they're not all wrong. Maybe there's something I ought to look at. So we really evaluate it. And then we feel the pain that we feel, which at this point is anger, but we try to get below the anger. And below the anger, regret, fear, shame, all sorts of things below the anger. So if you want to deal with anger, and this group says they're having a hard time dealing with anger, get below the anger. What's there? Loss of hope, unrealistic expectations, needs unmet from the birth to right up till whatever age you are today. Okay, so if I could look at what I'm angry about and resolve the anger, then I can accept and embrace my reality. Then I can truly forgive because I know what it is that needs to be forgiven. Now, when we deal with forgiveness, and this person's asking about anger and forgiveness, how do you forgive somebody that's still hurting you and you're angry at the person you need to forgive? Well, if they're still hurting you, it is not the time to forgive. It's the time to buck up and do whatever it takes to get this raging or this abusive person out of the home. So you just have to say, okay, I'll do it. And then, if I stop what they're doing and then they enter into recovery, then maybe I can forgive those things. But to forgive, it doesn't help you if they're still doing the problem. The other thing is, if somebody's been doing something and you forgive them, it's not endorsing or excusing or putting your stamp of approval on it. It's just saying it needs to stop. And so if we want to have peace, we have to jump in and intervene in the other areas of our lives that are robbing us of our peace and our serenity. And that's never, ever easy to do. Anger and then forgiveness. If I'm angry, it may be because I've lost something. And so what do I need to grieve? What's the loss? Was it mommy and dad or mom or dad that wasn't there for me and I never had anybody? I need to grieve that loss. Maybe it was a puppy that died and I've never fully grieved the loss of that pet. Whatever it is, grieving separates us from the rage and the anger or the sadness and depression. And it essentially lets it go. But if I never grieve, that's not going to happen. So maybe I need to stop long enough to consider whether or not grieving is the beginning of transformation in my life. And if so, then sadly, that's where I need to spend my time, is just grieving what needs to be grieved. And then sometimes, once I grieve, then I can start to see and accept the reality or accept the other person, and then I can embrace that reality. And from embracing, I can go to turning things around, and all of the pain that was so purposeless, now it has purpose and meaning and hope because I'm doing something about it. So I hope that if you're running this group and you've got trouble with anger and forgiveness, you'd ask questions like this. What is it that is the unmet need in my life? What is it that still has not been dealt with, that still is messing around in the world of sin? What is that area? I need to stop that, get support for it, and then a lot of things are going to be different. And when I do that, happiness, peace, serenity, all these great things start to seep in. Now, here's the thing. If you have a hard time with anger and forgiveness, there are two things. One, doing what you've been doing is probably not going to help. And two, doing what you've been doing with the mindset that you have is certainly not going to help you move forward. So what do? I confess to somebody. I see my own role in things. I don't take the blame or shame from somebody else that ought to have it. I'm just me, and I'm doing the best that I can at any given minute. That's what I do. And so then I can resolve my anger with realistic expectations, and then forgiveness eventually. Not too quick, but eventually. And forgiveness, whether the person is contrite or not, whether they are in their own recovery, doesn't matter. Because forgiveness isn't for them, it's for me. It sets me free. I don't have to worry anymore. So if this group has an anger and a forgiveness problem, they do go hand in hand. And I would be asking some questions. I'd probably write it out on a pad, pass it out. You angry and having a hard time forgiving? What are you afraid of? Number one. Number two, what are you expecting to receive that you haven't received yet? Where do I need a do-over would be the ultimate question about this whole issue of anger and forgiveness. Anytime we try to forgive by ourselves, usually doesn't go too well. And so finding somebody else to help you walk through the grieving process, embracing, and then helping you to forgive. It could be invaluable to your life. If you need some help with anything, you call us. We'd be glad to help you at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. In the meantime, are you angry? Maybe you're a little bit depressed, whatever. If that's the case, why don't you get some help by calling 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time, right here on Going Deeper.